On International Working Women's Day, we celebrate the woman who has taken on the world and also the woman who has been laboring within the domestic space all her life, a kind of labor which passes off as emotional love, but that labor is most often not recognized or paid. So on this day we celebrate both kinds of women who stay at home and who has gone out of home to make a career outside. Today we are talking to Dr. Amrita Roy Chowdhury, who has taken this very risky plunge into entrepreneurship with individuals who have different kind of cognitive disabilities. And also for the longest time she has also been managing the home front with her aplomb, which is remarkable. So on International Working Women's Day, it's interesting we talk about the home and the world, and also how both worlds can be managed with expertise. And here we have Amrita with us. So Amrita, we have a few questions for you today, and the first question which I have to ask you, that you left a secure profession of a medico and you plunged into entrepreneurship where there is no certainty whatsoever. How did you make this transition?
I never thought that I'd leave the medical practice. But yes, as on the time went by and I kept on, going ahead with the work, then I had to leave because I had to balance the home front as well as the work, and also the self-care that we talk about as a women. So maybe, and right now I'm not into medical practice because there is a demand from my children's side. I have to be at home, and then there are a few other issues that I have to resolve. But yes, next 4 or 5 years, I do have a plan to do my practice, to continue with my practice in the evening, because the times don't clash. So this is the morning work hour and that's the evening work hour. And then there are assistants who manage. And yes, obviously my husband is looking into the clinics and I take my share from that.
So from the experience of running a school for children with special needs and cognitive disabilities, so what is your experience of dealing with these individuals? Because and what is the acceptance level at home and the world? Like when you work with them, they're really treated as different and sometimes also not, almost incomplete human beings at times, if I can put it that way. So what is the acceptance level?
Experience, if you say about from personal point of view, I always it's love at first sight, because there is no particular reason that I started working, and I've never thought that I'll be so engrossed and so involved in this kind of work. But yes, acceptance is also something that depends on the socio-economic status of our country. When you have to feed a child, when you have to take care of so many of therapies, interventions, and it's so costly affair, and our Indian economy is so hard, then it really hits that acceptance. So actually it is not about that the parents don't want to, that the parents can't sometimes. Just because of the society, the environment, this doesn't support us. So I think there is a bit of clash, and of course I can't say that they're not lovable by their parents, but yes, when it comes to harsh reality of feeding them, taking care of them, getting secured future for them, that is really difficult for all the parents. So I think that balance, we need to work on very patiently, and it's a long run that we have to be with the side of the parents to even give them that breathing space, to support them to earn so much that they can secure their old age as well as their child's adult age. So I think it's all about balancing all this.
And the acceptance is also perhaps dependent on the economic responsibility which
Absolutely.
the parents have to take because of these children. So
it's so tiring and exhausting, the climatic conditions, the travel, the societal pressure, everything is actually a cause for not accepting a child.
Absolutely. It is nothing so much to do with love per se. It is the other external factors like society and also I believe that the economic responsibility which every maybe a middle class family has to take in order to give that child a good life.
Yes.
So that is also a burden at times. So maybe it's a good way to look at it. Like acceptance, it's not. It just comes. It cannot come because there are other obstacles which are external to that emotional bond that the parents have between the children and themselves.
And also the good life is marked by good schooling, good tuition center, good places where they can go and have their performing arts and all. So these all are part of good life.
Right.
So when you are not, or when you are unable to provide that, that actually becomes very frustrating and exhausting for parents to go through.
Right. So the demands of a good life, that they are the parameters of good life, it's very difficult for them to abide by those. Also, it's not just running a school, you have also taken this very bold step of integrating them into the industrial fold. So what were the challenges of that? Because I consider this as a remarkable example of integrating people with differences and different kind of needs into the mainstream. So when you bring them into the mainstream, and that too in this arena of entrepreneurship, so what are the challenges that you face? But even then, you have been successful in doing it. So the possibility of, why am I asking you this question is that when a child is kind of diagnosed with any kind of cognitive disability, so it's not that they should be abandoned or they should be looked upon as if they are not kind of complete children, or they are not, but you have actually made them very able-bodied people. So how this transition?
Again, I would say the key word is balancing. Initially, I had to go through a lot of challenges because nobody was in a position to even accept that they're in a position to work in the society. But very small steps, consistent steps, without any break, and just not letting them get back. That has actually helped us a lot. Until date, we keep our limits very small. So I think small steps is also, along with balancing, is something which has also made us go. And it's not about one day. It's also about the entire future is dependent on that. And sitting today on 8th March 2020, you cannot decide what will happen 8th March 2021 or maybe 8th April 2020. So it is always about working and just sorting out the challenges that we have. We have challenges from fun to acceptance in the society. Everywhere we have to resolve. But yes, it's a huge team support, huge team effort, and also team game is something. It's a big thing. The parents and the professionals will have to come on for the sake of their children to move their work on.
So, as I'm talking to you, and since I know you for a long time, I believe that your work can also be used as a model in the sense that how individuals with any kind of cognitive disability could be actually brought into the mainstream. So if that can be used as a model, did you have a model which you followed, like to bring them into this fold, or it was completely your brainchild?
No, there was no model, but yes, there were some tips about getting them, about grooming them, how to make them fit in the society so that it looks absolutely inclusive, and it is an inclusive model. But now we are documenting and following steps by steps. But again, I would say it's all about the socio-economic condition of the country. When Bengal, it's very hard to have business over here because we don't carry business in our genes. And you don't expect that on a sudden day, this person will become an entrepreneur. For that, you have to have a lot of mentorship, training and all. So, and training, it's about something that we need throughout the life. But for them, you have to have a bridge. A person who is very well aware about the disability field. So that is how we are doing the entire process. For that, it is actually taking a time because there are a huge number of people who are in the midlife. So we have to train them with the experts, subject matter experts, and these people are then working with them. So basically, the middle line is consisting of mentors, mothers, and fathers.
Right. So what kind of emotional investment does it require from your part? Right? Because as I know that you have been faced with this criticism that since your own children are not do not belong to this syndrome, so you are almost looked upon as an outsider. So as an outsider, how do you get into this integrative field of, bringing them into the fold and also becoming a mentor for that matter? I mean, what are the challenges of that?
You have to have patience, the time, because as the project is becoming successful, there is a ray of hope for the parents, for the entire country, that yes, there can be a model which can be worked on, which can be replicated in other, though we have not started to share yet, but maybe by next year we will start sharing our model.
Right.
So I think that is actually creating an impact. The day one I understood, if I have to bring them into the society, I have to control my emotions, because if I'm emotional, I can't get the work done. So I have full empathy, but no sympathy.
To have empathy and no sympathy, and because I have seen you working with them in a certain way, like treating them as workers, like those who are important in the field in which they have been integrated. So you treat them as I've seen you working with them, that you treat them as if okay, they are workers and they're not different from the others. So when you say empathy and not sympathy, I understand the way you approach the whole idea of getting them into it. So they do not feel that they're different.
Yeah.
So it's also about, therefore, like when we integrate into the mainstream, it is also about eliminating that idea of being different and not belonging. So that's what you have done. I would guess that.
And since it's a mixed group, no? So
Yeah.
we always have to have the HR processes, policies, everything very disabled friendly, which
Right.
goes with the regular community as well as the disabled community.
True.
So I think these are the things that needs to be shared.
That needs to be, and I believe that the model that you are talking about needs to be replicated elsewhere. Otherwise, the work that you are doing, because I feel that any kind of marginality, in order to make that acceptable, I believe certain populist models which have become popular or successful, should be kind of shared. So, do you have any program in mind how you can share this?
In this June or July, we'll be conducting workshops
Okay.
for other parent groups. As I said, it's a team game, other parents group, other people who are interested in investing in this kind of entrepreneurship projects. So how we did our journey, who all are involved, and what were their role into the entire project. So we are going to explain everything.
Right. So as you are mentioning the word parents many times, so I understand they are the most important stakeholders here. And also because acceptance begins from home. So it is like when you are integrating these individuals into the entrepreneurship fold, so the parents are also coming along. Because without that support, perhaps it is difficult to sustain
It is impossible.
It is impossible. So, right. And also as I talk to you, I also understand that, when it is industry, there is a lot of risk factor associated with it, right? So when you are pitching, for example, a product, so how do you do it? Like, do you think that it sells because the sympathy, quote unquote, people have for them? Oh, okay, fine, they have autistic disorder, okay, they have Down syndrome, they have any kind of cognitive disability. So that way the product gains a kind of a sympathetic currency. It's because of that it sells, or it is done in a different way.
No, see, even if it sales in that way on a sympathetic ground, but as the owner of the project or the driving force behind the project, you have to always keep one thing in mind, that at the same time you are getting this community in front of the society. So you have to always keep everything in mind that, okay, you sold the product, but you cannot create new customers every day. So we have to face that person as a customer each and every day. If you don't give the product well, that customer is gone. So you have to that kind of workforce ready that you can deliver at any point of time.
So sympathy wouldn't sell after a point, like it has to be quality.
Sympathy won't sell after the first time.
First time even, like it's just quality of the product which matters at the end of the day. So what I understand is like when you are bringing them into the fold of entrepreneurship, so do you think the products sell because of the sympathy currency which goes with it, like made by cognitively disabled children or individuals? So is that how the product sells? Is that the unique selling point for the products?
We have to keep one thing in mind, is selling is not for one day. selling is a continuous process. So even if I say that it is made by the people who have cognitive disability or who are from any marginalized background, but I always have to keep something in mind that I have to keep my workforce ready. I cannot create new customers every day. We have to sustain on old customers. Old customer will only come to you when you give a good price and a good quality of food. So that's how it sustains. And it's not about treating them through sympathy, but it is all about treating them empathetically.
True. And also, like, the repeat value of a product would only increase if quality is ensured. So it doesn't really matter after a point whether the makers of that product have any disability or not. It is about how the industry would only accept them if quality is ensured. So after a point, it doesn't really matter that way.
Not matter, but yes, we always keep in mind the other questions that you asked, whether I followed any model or not. But this were some of the tips that I used. Is like, if some products are made by them, it has to be very valued quality. Like, not only nothing is devalued, but still, person who is selling something which is easily available on road will actually not solve the purpose. So it has to be a very highly valued product. So the quality and this thing has to be retained.
No, the industry is ruthless, right? So industry would not accept, industry is ruthless. So whether it's sympathy or it's empathy, industry only would return to that product which is sellable to more number of people.
Not only products, marketing, consistent innovations, creativity, everything is needed. Because we have seen, we have experienced that if you are selling some kind of food this week, the entire thing has to be changed next week. And then weather has a very big impact on the kind of food that we are selling, because you have to sell it. Not only you're making, when you're making the product, that time temperature is important. Till you're selling off the products, storing, everything needs weather and temperature control. Those all are big factors.
So yeah, there are like several other factors. So the sympathy factor or the empathy factor is not like the driving force of this. So when it comes to industry, all the other factors which would matter to any other kind of industry is also important here. So at this moment, I would like to ask you another question, that since you are working on differences, so any kind of difference, like whether it's gender difference, difference in sexuality, difference in terms of maybe body shape, and here cognitive or any anatomical disability. So what would your proposition be today? Like, how is differences acceptable? How is it possible to accept or be tolerant towards differences? It's a more general question, like it's nothing to do with your model or maybe the kind of work you are doing, but a more general question about accepting differences.
People will only be inquisitive if you are different. If you really go in the crowd, in the mass, nobody is bothered. So that's why, that's why we're having these discussions of differences and all. If everything would have been same or with the flow, so these questions wouldn't have arrived. I think still what we need is to understand the statement, live and let live. That is something I think missing in the society. And not every time also people are inquisitive in a very negative manner to understand the differences, but also if you take it like they're just inquiring about the knowledge, because certainly when we were very small and we never knew about what intellectual disability, what psychosocial disability was about, these terms were not defined, everything was same for us. Then there was one thing, that's man. Right. But now as we see the differences, we really do a lot of studies, researches on differences, then the terms are coming. So I think somehow differences are good to have, so that you gather knowledge. There are subjects that you can discuss about, that the subjects that you can really get knowledge about. So
like the kind of thing that you are doing is also part of knowledge generation about a certain kind of difference which is looked upon as a disability. It may be a difference. So there is a question about what is able and what is an able-bodied person. So that's why perhaps we always use the word temporarily abled bodies. Like, you never know when a person might become disabled the very next moment. Here we move into the domestic sphere from the world of like industry, entrepreneurship, but I believe that every home is a space where every woman has to be that extremely expert entrepreneur, otherwise a home cannot be run. But at this moment, I would like to ask you, Amrita, that whether when we talk about equality, when we talk about eliminating differences or accepting differences, what do you think, like within the domestic space, is it possible to achieve gender equality? Is it really possible within this heteropatriarchal society? How easy or difficult it is to achieve that?
So I don't know whether it's easy or difficult, but yeah, I to some extent find myself lucky that I'm born in a metro city where my parents are educated, my in-laws have been educated. In both spheres, my mother and mother-in-law have been very actively participating in the economical contribution of the family. And that's why maybe they have a say on the family. So that's how, my brother and my father, they were very confident, or they have been used to see women on work front as well as home front. The same thing with my mother-in-law, since she was into having a very hectic working life. So my husband, I think he had a childhood where he has seen his mother contributing to the economy of the family, as well as my both son. But yes, this is very difficult when you draw a line about the economical contribution, economical independence, and a voice. Even if you're economically independent, you don't have that voice to raise over. So I think this all has a mixed effect. And if you talk about gender equality, so why or on what topics are we talking about gender equality? Till date, it is very easy for someone, for a male, to go and have an extramarital affair. But yes, when you are a woman and you are a mother, you always have a subconscious mind hitting you that you're somebody who you have given birth to is looking upon you. So I think this all matters. So, and yes, if you ask me on personal front, after all these experiences working with disabled children, they're almost of my younger son's age when I started work.
Right.
And I always used to feel that when I'm thinking about what grades he's in, what numbers he's achieving in math, science, then there are other world when parents are worried that whether my child is able to brush the teeth properly or his toilet trained. So this disbalance or imbalance within the two spheres has really affected me a lot. So I still believe that you have to learn how to make your food before you know how to write on a page.
That's very important. And I would like to ask you this question, as I know that your younger son is a good cook. So that's why I'm asking that many times we raise these questions that mothers do not raise their sons well. And therefore they also do not know how to respect women or even believe in gender equality, because they see a kind of a division within the domestic sphere all the time. But I believe you tutor your sons to be otherwise, like do not look upon that, that kind of a division of labor, that the kitchen is a space for the mother and the outside world is a space of the father. So when you have kind of broken those boundaries, do you have anything to say to the mothers of these days? I mean, today, that how they should, look at it?
I would really have to say to the fathers, because
yes.
If you're talking about raising a male child, maybe they adore their mother, they're very loving, affectionate to the mothers, but they look upon to their fathers.
Right.
So I think fathers play a very important role.
Fathers.
So if they continuously see that there is always conflict over strong over weak, so automatically the child adopts that.
And I've also seen from my own experience that the father is not respectful towards the mother. For example, like if there is this, even if there is a very subtle and understated disrespect, which may not be very vocal, even then children at times because they would treat their mothers in a similar manner. I've seen this happening everywhere. They do not take their mother seriously because the father hadn't taken her seriously up to a point. So I believe that when it comes about upbringing and raising, as you said, that both parents in a very ideal situation, like everybody doesn't have both the parents, but even no parents at all. But even in that situation, it is important that how you kind of tutor your children into respecting both the parents in a certain way. So, and what would be your message to stay-at-home women today? Like women who are looking after their children, looking after their husbands, but they do not have an identity of their own, and this identity is only based on these familiar associations that she has. So, what is your message to them today?
Create an identity of a homemaker.
Yes.
That's itself a very big identity.
That is important, but how does she do that? Because the height of the home, as you just said in your earlier answer, that the home, and if you're a homemaker, it doesn't always come with an economic independence. And without economic independence, I believe the entire women's movement began with this demand that domestic labor also needs to be paid. But we do not look upon domestic labor as something which is worth asking for money. Because even I do that, like for a person who is even taking care of my very close ones. So caregiving within the family is not paid. So that is labor of love. But in many cases, I've seen that this labor of love is never returned with enough dividends. So in that case, how do you create that identity of the homemaker? I know it is as I said in the introduction, that it's also a form of entrepreneurship, right? So how do you do it?
Communication is something very important. So women will have to communicate. For that, they need to have some space, some self-care for them. Though everywhere it is very common to say women and self-care, love. As I said, it's very personalized. It's very difficult for me to say at this moment on the
Maybe a general message is difficult, but
I think start communicating. Communicating in every form, whether it's your in-laws, children, husband.
Maybe having a voice even within the family, that this is my right, and be vocal about your rights.
Vocal and in a very confident way, very presentable way.
Yes.
Because that matters.
Yes.
Every day you don't feel like participating, because there are a lot of planning processes in the home front also.
Absolutely, yes.
So if you present something very in a presentable way, I think communication becomes, or raising your voice becomes more prominent.
And I believe also talking is very important. Like when you are creating an identity of a homemaker, I think it comes with a lot of emotional baggage, because if that woman doesn't have an outlet, like for example a friend, or maybe when you say communication, I believe when you are communicating with your family members, but also having a kind of a circle of friends outside the home where you can communicate, maybe whether it's about domestic violence, whether about a misgiving that you have because of your child is not performing in a certain way. So communication, because what my experience tells me, I've seen that many of these women who do not talk, they go into this eternal depression. So, and that's a huge issue for homemakers, because even if they cannot, enter into the world of career making, then at home, this depression catches up with them very, very, very easily. Actually.
So one thing is life is all about changes.
Yes.
Maybe since in the home front everything is so stagnant or takes time from one transition to another transition. So women will also have to accept and move on with the changes that is happening. So if something is happening at the beginning of the married life, this will not continue after 5 years of the marriage life. This time and the situation changes. Priorities change. So I think flexible is also a term with the communication.
Right.
It's very important.
So since I know you very personally, we have been friends and we have been exchanging our life stories for the longest time now. I would like to ask you one question, because today is the International Working Women's Day, and many feminists, as you know, they celebrate motherhood because it's a very unique thing for women. But there are many women who think that motherhood is a burden. But whatever the take on motherhood be, motherhood is the most celebrated and most denigrated, because if you do not stick to the stereotype of the mother figure, which is there in folk tales, fairy tales, and no matter in the whole cultural domain, if you do not be that mother, then perhaps a lot of criticism comes your way. And as far as I know, to your eldest son, you have to bear this stigma, I would say, even a very, derogatory label of a stepmother, which you are not always. When I say stepmother, it comes with a loaded negativity. But it was not there always. So was it a kind of a struggle to live with that label and also collapse it after a point? How did you deal with that stigma or maybe that label?
Stigma is I always used to listen to one line, you don't look like a mother. And my question is, how does a mother look like? So, we have very typical notions of some physical structures that we associate with the characters. So, a mother must be someone who has a son who is 21 years old, and every time your age, and so you don't have a right to look young, to look good. Somebody even told me when I go out with my son that we thought you're boyfriend and girlfriend. I said,
Okay.
So this kind of questions over the time, because maybe this home front, since I have a voice, and yes, my decisions are being taken very seriously at home front. So I think I could have overcome, but there are a lot of people who not only stay moms but stay dads. There are always inhibitions or maybe some boundaries that you don't get to, because what people will see, not exactly what kind of bondings you are having. So I still remember when my husband and I thought of marrying. So, and we both, three of us were on a car, we were going somewhere, and my husband took the permission of my son that if I marry this woman, is it okay with you?
Okay.
So it is more important to have, a relationship, a bonding, acceptance from the child side and from the parent side, whether it's a step-dad or a step-mom. Because overall you're entering, the child has a notion of a mother, whether you fit into that. But yes, one thing which clicked is the bonding of friendship.
Right.
That happens when you're a mother, when you're a father, when you're in-laws, when you're husband, wife, everything. But one common thing is friend. So that is very important. That you be the best of your friends with your son, wherever you're living with. A good friendship is something which helps you to take your relationship ahead. And yes, till date, I don't feel like saying everyone, because yes, for the notion that stepmom maybe carries a lot of negative association with that. But I still think, like parents who are adopting, who also have a similar kind of...
Absolutely, that was what I was coming to now.
So I think this kind of parenting should also come up. Because I think divorces are more than marriages nowadays.
Right.
So a lot of relationships are getting choked, or decision making becomes a challenge when there is a child.
True.
But it is very easy for the new parent to have a bond of a relationship with the child. Very easy. So it is more important how you place in front of them, how you are interacting with them.
So, and also, as you said, that this is again coming back to that same idea of communication, that you talk and you just develop a bond, and that way you move on. And also the fact that all these stereotypes which make our lives in a certain way, so all these stereotypes need to be broken up your time. So with that, thank you, Amrita, for your time and the excellent conversation that we had regarding your work and the home front. And it's interesting that you chose to talk about both, because one is certainly very private to you, one I know is a very public figure of yours. But I believe when the public figure, the public image of you becomes available to everyone, there is always a very kind of a private image, which also sometimes needs to be focused on, because that gets lost. Because on the private front also we do have a lot of struggles and a lot of negotiations that we make.
No, but there has always been a thin line of relation between this work that I'm doing now.
Right.
It's all about marginalization, because a lot of relatives used to come and ask me, how's your relation with your child? But you don't ask a biological mother that how's your relation with your child.
True.
And then these questions really don't arise.
Absolutely.
Because it's the same thing. You have accepted the entire relationship.
True.
You have given the consent to be in that relationship. So I think this acceptance and it also takes a lot of courage to ignore all these words.
Absolutely.
So it has been with us over years, but now when they see 15 years of marriage, after 15 years of marriage, so nobody is they don't now bother to ask us. And everything is going fine.
Yes. That's true. I mean, it appears like people, when they come to know for the first time, they have all those preconceived ideas associated with it. But generally, as they see you into this relationship, that idea changes. In fact, this also happened with me as a queer person. I've seen that, like when people have interacted with me, after a point they've said, oh, we had a very different notion of queerness. Now that we know you from up close, now I know how to. So that way, I guess all these marginalities at the end of the day speak to each other in a certain way. It does. So with that, we come to the end of this interview, where I would like to identify myself as a queer feminist, talking to a mother of 2 children, and also somebody who has taken the world of entrepreneurship by storms by bringing into it individuals who are not very easily accepted by society. So I believe on International Working Women's Day, this conversation between us, when 2 marginalities actually speaking across the table, we can establish a dialogue, and we understand that why the base of the International Working Women's Day needs to be expanded, in the sense that all of us, some way or the other, are victims of heteropatriarchy and certain ideas of abilities. So with that, we would like to come to the end of this interview, and I believe that in future this conversation might help others to think on and think through. Thank you.